welcome to the Wild West podcast. My name is Richie Riche of the MHRT Network. Over that away is DZ representing his Los Angeles Chargers. You can tell that by the big lightning bolt that's in behind him there, just in case you were missing, or on the hat too. It's all over. And down directly below, we got Mr. Jack Kenna representing his Las Vegas Raiders. We are, in fact, working with the shield and, the whole thing and all that good stuff. We got a lot of Raiders fans in the chat, hoping to get a bunch more of the Chargers folks and Chiefs folks in the chat. We are on the search on this podcast for a fourth to represent the Chiefs to replace Alex, who ditched us and ran for the hills because he just couldn't take the heat. No, just kidding. But anywho, Alex is no longer here. The smug is no longer with the show. Although I will say that as far as Chiefs fans go and other opponents and stuff, Alex was quite balanced in the way that he handled himself. And
he's a really good Chiefs fan, man.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Man.
Like him very much, and I wish him and his
rest
family,
in peace to Alex Smugness.
Come back, Alex.
But anyways,
he'll miss it once.
He was great. So we are looking for another Chiefs fan to join the show. So if you or anyone thinks they are more than a fan and believes that they are in fact a fanalist, please have them reach out to me on X. You can find me there. My handle thingy is right there. And we will go from there. As we move on, we got a great show for you guys today. We are going to go over the minicamp, rookie minicamp, and OTAs and kind of group them all together for you. Talk about certain folks that stood out, other folks that maybe found that they are in for a difficult slug of getting themselves on the roster. Because this is really what this time really does for our coaches, right? Is it helps them really position certain players in certain position groups in a form of a pecking order where they kind of need to start seeing, did you come to us in good shape? Are you coming here to work? Did you actually read the playbook when we gave it to you? Did you, follow the training regime that we said you needed to follow in the off season? And then more importantly, and the other thing I think is often overlooked is, did you actually go above and beyond? Right? Did you go past what we gave you? Did you actually read even more? Did you perhaps as a new quarterback come to the camps with maybe some additional plays that you thought might work or fit in what we gave you in the playbook? Same thing with wide receivers and same thing with like offensive linemen and things like that. These are all things that coaches at the NFL level love to see. They want players to be involved. To kind of give Alex his due, because he and I have obviously been on screen now for a good solid 2 years together. And he and I would always go back and forth on what Andy Reid was known for. Andy Reid is known for that open door policy with players coming to him with plays. And he has actually got a reputation of absorbing those plays into his playbook. And that's why you constantly see the Chiefs in the mid and back end of their season, all of a sudden with some random play that you've never seen before. And a lot of the times those plays are actually coming from player input where they have approached the head coach. I think that really does foster a competitive nature on the squad to say, that was mine. Do you see that? That was mine. Do you have something you can contribute? And Jack, it pains me to say this aloud. A little part of me might die inside as I say these words. Pete Carroll.
Oh, gotta love it.
He is known for that exact same mentality as a head coach. That is his kind of general mindset as a head coach, which is we are going to have a competition one day of the week as we practice to try to foster that competitive nature within the team. He actually will promote guys as a result of their performance in those competition days to play on game day to see if they can continue that ascension on the roster. And man, it kills me that you guys finally made the right decision, in my opinion, in your head coach.
Right, finally. Thank you.
No, I'm being serious.
I'm serious too. Yeah. Raider Nation serious.
Yeah.
Finally got a confident, head coach. Someone can compete with you guys. You guys got Hall of Famers, so I'm glad that we picked up one too. Just try to keep up with you. And guys, Sacktown, Robert Pena, Gord, Chewy. I see all you guys. All my brothers are in the house tonight. Look at that. Loving it.
They came early, Jack.
They did. They all came early, and I certainly appreciate all of the fans that are here in the chat leaving their comments down below. So, given your teams and affiliations, I want to hear what the chat's thoughts are from what they have heard from Minicamp and from the rookie Minicamp, from mandatory Minicamp, as well as the OTAs. Obviously, OTAs are in fact voluntary, so you're not going to necessarily read as much into things there on who's there, who's not, etc. However, with a new coach and new scheme and new everything there in Vegas in particular, obviously DZ, you and I have newer head coaches, but not necessarily new head coaches. You just want to see more of the same and progression. You want to see that continued progress or laddering, if you will, of the team of continuing to raise up those rungs and continually improve. So with that in mind, Jack, I think this is going to be probably one of the Raiders' most important off-season programs, because this is going to help your team and your coach determine, the old adage, is you in or is you out? Right? Like this is really going to be the most critical part, I think, for your Las Vegas Raiders. So with that in mind, you can kick us off.
Yeah. So it's the clock is ticking. When you got a head coach that's 74, but brings in the accolades, what he has got, like you guys got fabulous head coaches, Hall of Famers, like I just mentioned as well. So the guys are all showing up. We kind of talked about this for a half second, and I think I should touch on it. So even like, guys like Colton Miller, who has no money guaranteed on his contract, is only going to get like $12 million right now, the way it sits. We all think his contract's going to be redone, but he's out there. He's got no guaranteed money. So he's out there in OTAs, practicing. And if he gets hurt, that's kind of on him. He's not holding out. And the same thing with Jacoby Myers. He's on the last year of his deal too. So you see players that are coming out like that, the veterans and the rookies. And it's been a show for Dante Thornton. I mean, Raider, the guys in the chat all know this, man. Thornton has been blowing it up. What's up there, Ed Winchell?
That's that 6'4" guy, right?
Yeah, everyone. I mean, I just saw a thing on JPJ had like all the rookies over for dinner, barbecuing some tri-tips and stuff like that. And he's just got it. He said, and I think it's his words, was like, he's out there with the big boys and it's like nothing. It's like, it's nothing to him. So, I mean, I am just so utterly excited for him. He's, out of all the players that are out there, I got to say, he's the one that is like really, really sticking out. Because you guys see this. All the coaches, they love everybody, but they're not in pads or anything like that. It's really more like the skill guys, where you can kind of see, DBs, quarterback, wide receivers. Let's see how they make plays or stop plays, for that matter. And this Thornton kid is just absolutely crushing it. I mean, I think every article that I read, there's always something, a little something about him over like other players that are on the squad. So it's like at this time of the year, you don't want to have, you want to hear stuff. When you don't hear stuff, then that's when you kind of start going, oh, okay, what's going on, with these cats. So he's been the main one. And I'm thoroughly, utterly excited to see what this kid can do. So breakout player. Yeah, I think he definitely could be a breakout player for sure. Seriously. Oh,
it's good on my end.
Am I choppy, guys? Hey, in chat, am I sounding okay, or am I coming in and out? So another one that's, it's interesting with these OTAs, with the offensive linemen, since they can't, they don't have pads on. And so we're going to see what the offensive lines and defensive lines are going to do. But what I found is very, interesting. It seems like Kappa is already kind of, hey, thank you, Nab, man. Salute, brother. So it seems like, Kappa's already kind of filling that spot at the right guard. And it's kind of like going to almost like a three-way battle. At first, it was Parham and Meredith going at it, but then they also started throwing Munford. So Munford for, DZ, Richie, for you guys, he was the starting right tackle last year until he got hurt, and then DJ Glaze took over for him, and now he's starting to get some reps over at the left guard position, and Meredith is getting reps at the backup center.
What about his sons, though?
About who?
What about his sons?
Whose sons? Pete Carroll's sons?
Mumford and his sons.
Mumford and his sons? But
sorry,
it's interesting. He actually played better, Yeah. He actually played better at left tackle than he did at right guard when he had to play that position. So I'm just wondering now how he's going to do. He's a big body, guy. He's a hulking man. So I'm just kind of curious to see, how that kind of translates with that camp battle. That's going to be a very fun and interesting one to see. Also, what's been interesting is like Eric Stokes and Porter, the second round draft pick that the Raiders had, are right now playing with the number ones. So for cornerback. So Bennett, who was our number one, our best cornerback on the roster, is right now playing with the number twos. So I'm just kind of curious if he's like completely back from his injury, or if there's still something, lingering with that. So, but I'm excited to see that they're actually, Porter's out there, Stokes is out there. I didn't expect Stokes to even be a starter or have a chance to be a starter. I kind of saw him more as a backup, kind of role player type guy, but he's been taking over those first team reps. So that's pretty kind of cool on that. I just kind of wish, I don't know, but Raider Nation, you can tell me what you think. After seeing the Jameer signing, I think he went to Baltimore and he got what, $4 million in like just $500,000 incentives. So, I mean, $4.5 million for a guy that was making $17 million. Yes, we all know he's got an injury history. He's only played 7 games in the last 2 years for each season. So, but for that type of price with having $36 million in salary cap, I think it would have been a nice pickup, because that is like kind of one of the weak spots that I do see on the Raiders roster is our DBs.
Definitely not a weak spot on the Broncos.
Nope, not at all.
No.
I wish I had some of that. Yeah, Barron's a beast.
I mean, talk about cornerbacks that signing by the Ravens today, man. They got to have at least probably the top secondary, in my opinion, as a whole. Them and maybe the Texans.
Denver.
And then I would say Broncos probably in that top 5, obviously just with their cornerbacks.
I think I got Broncos number 1 in the NFL.
Well, I think you gotta do a secondary as a whole, though, Jack.
Yeah, no, and I still think that.
Okay, so Brendan Jones graded out in the top 5 last year in safeties.
Yeah,
Hufanga, so long as he stays healthy, has been in that conversation for most of his career. The problem is that when it's staying healthy, which has been his issue. So fair enough. Although in fairness, the Broncos, the medical team and medical staff has kept guys the healthiest team for 2 years in a row now. So that's good. And then, so there's that. Raider Shield, I read that. It's just, Jack's a good dude. And, I'm not sure I really want to throw that up on the screen.
They're all talking about your eye. What happened, buddy? Did you get in a bar fight?
Oh, yeah. I tripped and I fell.
That's what they all say, right?
No, I'm serious. I was wearing my slides.
Jack, hold on, look at me.
Oh, wait, I got in a fight. No.
Take your meds, Edward.
Blink twice if you need me to call help.
No, I'm good.
Perhaps some family member abuse that may be occurring within the Kenna household.
No winks.
No? Okay, you're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like I was coming out from the garage and I got some steps there and I caught the tip of my flip-flop and I took a tumble. That's old man stuff, you know what I mean?
I'm feeling you, Jack. I believe you, buddy. I
could have made something up and just said, got in a fight with the Kansas City Chiefs fan and kicked his ass. But but unfortunately, that is the facts.
Yeah. So, see, this is exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking this. I was thinking this was, something along those lines.
Dude, I'd look a whole lot worse if that was my wife doing that to me. She's a little firecracker.
Oh, pushed someone out of the way. You know what? Good for you, Jack. That's a much better story.
There you go. Yeah, I got hit by the car.
Ed, I also heard that he caught a cat that fell out of the tree after he ran off the side of the road. So I mean, it was really.
Hey, Chewy, I don't even know, bro. You show Chewy's. I don't know how many I had, but I did have a few.
So,
but it wasn't from the CS.
Real quick on corners and secondary, just as we're kind of talking briefly about Broncos and whatnot. We also signed a UFL cornerback today for my Denver Broncos, Mario Godrich. He is a special teams guy, last played with the Eagles in 2022.
Welcome to the practice squad.
And 2023. He's a guy that is going to be an interesting one and is really going to be obviously in that kind of lower echelon of the depth chart there. But what makes him very interesting is that he is a special teams ace. And, another one, right? So we got another dude that's been a special teams ace. So that's pretty awesome. He went to the UFL and played quite well there. And then we pulled him back on to the team and signed him to a one-year deal. In my opinion, I think he is competing against Damari Mathis. I think it's going to be between Godrich and Mathis to see who makes the roster in my Denver Broncos cornerback room. And the special teams kind of quality that Godrich has may actually put him as a last-minute addition to the Denver Broncos, may actually give him an edge. So I think that's a rather interesting one. And frankly, he comes into a cornerback room whose backup nickel corner could be a starter on the vast majority of NFL rosters.
Feel free to cut him.
So
yeah, he doesn't make the roster. Cut him. We need him.
That's a super
Send him to Vegas.
So
send him to Vegas.
Yeah, that's a super deep cornerback room. And then our safety room is good. I will give you that, DZ, where we have a good starting duo and we have a competent set of kind of backups that are there. But I think when you kind of group them all together, so long as they're all healthy, I think they're going to be.
I'm still saying top five. I'm not saying, I'm not. This isn't like a slap on the Broncos. I'm still saying top five. I'm just thinking about what the Ravens adding Jair Alexander, who also has a issue with staying healthy, but that secondary as a whole is pretty damn good as well. I like it because I always like when a team has like a really elite safety because it kind of brings everything together in that secondary. It's kind of like the QB back there. So, and in my opinion, he's probably the 1A to 1D, the best safety in the league right now, in my opinion. And then you got the Houston Texans secondary, which is also pretty damn good. And then the Broncos are right there, so we'll see. Obviously, in their division, I have you guys as number one, which is
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's not even a question.
Yeah. So when we take a look at where you guys are at, Jack, who are some standout guys, not necessarily just full position groups? And I think that your comments on your offensive lineman that you're talking about there in terms of who's going to be where, I don't think that you're going to get any real definitive answers until you come back for your mandatory kind of training camps that are there, which are coming up in a few weeks' time or so. I think that that's really where you're going to get your real, when pads come on, right? That's the thing, is that you need pads.
That's where you separate the men from the boys when the pads come on. I mean, right now it's all kind of dress rehearsal and just a walkthrough. So, like I said, it works good for, the wide receivers, the defensive backs, the skilled players. But, what we all like is the girth, right? The beef in the, in the offensive line, the defensive lines, and see where, they're at. Hey, Richie, and Nab wanted me to say this. Yeah, you can post, dude. Nab Man's my boy, dude. We talk behind the scenes a lot, so you can post whatever he puts up there. And he's also the guy that I said, if I'm not here, I'll reach out to him and, help out with the show. And he said he'd do it. So it's always nice to have, a backup.
I agree.
Also, welcome Piano Man, Jack Kenna.
Yep, I saw him come in too.
What's up, Piano Man? I told you, bro, this is the right show for you. Support your Chargers. Let's hear your takes on OTAs. Put it in the chat. I mean, we all want to know because you talk about the Raiders. Let's talk about, again, this is an AFC West show. Let's talk about all the AFC West teams.
Bingo. We talking?
But the rules still apply, though. The rules still apply. You got to be respectful. Nothing's different.
So who else, Jack, aside from your 6'5" wide receiver who is looking good? Who else is kind of that you've heard?
Boy, like you said, the coaches have I kind of listen more to what the players say than what the coaches say, because the coaches are going to hype up everybody, right? Everybody's like an all-pro in the coach's eyes, but it's just the names that come out. So Michael Mayers, one of my favorite players, a Notre Dame kid, watched him all 4 years there, coming into the NFL, and then, had that mysterious disappearance for 6 weeks, 7 weeks. So, Pete Carroll said the first thing he did, he sat down, just make sure that he's okay. He's mentally there. He's in it. He's looking good. They were even talking about, again, I thought this for last year was like two 12 personnel. They might even run some 13 personnel. So I think that would be, really fascinating and interesting. Of course, Ascengenti, just a humble kid, kind of keeps his mouth shut. He's kind of like a Bowers in a way. Doesn't say a whole lot, but, he just goes out there and performs. So all the players, they're excited about him. Again, JPJ comes up and says, hey, man, I'm your center. You run behind me, I'll take good care of you. So Ascengenti's been another one. I haven't heard, it's all been about the offense players. Again, the draft was mostly offense this year versus the defense. I haven't heard a lot about the two offensive linemen they got, and also the two defensive linemen. When, Coach Carroll would talk, he kind of lumped them all together. So I don't see like right now that anyone's kind of jumping out between those position groups. Porter is getting some run, but again, from a guy that, in the way of guy 6'3", run again, 3.40 flat 40, starting, with the first team. I'm hearing, from players that, he's looking pretty good, but again, we got to wait until the pads come on. I got to see that from that physicality and see what he brings there. And again, he's only got 7 games, coming from being a wide receiver, kind of like a Richard Sherman, to coming over as a defensive back. He's got a whopping 7 games. So he's definitely going to be raw. And I want to see what he brings. The safety room, I think it's going to be interesting. I even heard rumors, that they're preparing to run 3 safety sets.
Yeah.
And then what they're going to do is they're going to bring Jeremy Chin down into the slot cornerback position. And then you'll have the other safeties out there. So it's kind of interesting.
A nickel position.
Yeah, it's that's kind of interesting.
What Derwin James did last season. So Jeremy Chin, I can see Jeremy Chin doing that as well.
Well, you know what? They might have to do it because all the Raiders have is Harmon. And, after Nate Hobbs got hurt last season, I got to say, I really wasn't impressed with Harmon. So, and I always forget the kid's name. He's not really a kid. He's 31 years old. But I do like that the best free agent that's out there is that slot corner, from Cincinnati. He's kind of not a Pete Carroll type player because the guy's only 5'9", but he's got 10 years of experience. and he's the highest rated, slot corner that's out there. And he's had a pretty good career, but it is kind of interesting that, they really haven't looked at him. They did bring in, I'm trying to remember, it was like a cornerback from Seattle, when Carroll was back there in those days, to come out for OTAs for 2 days, but I haven't heard anything about him since. So I'm kind of thinking that ship has kind of sailed.
Jack, are you talking about a cornerback or safety that's a free agent?
Oh, it's a slot corner, Cincinnati. And I can't remember his name, but he's only like 5'9". He's 31 years old. And Sacktown, there is Harper. That's an interesting one too.
Mike Hilton?
Harper. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
That's who I was thinking of. I think I would like to see him get signed.
He's like probably one of the top remaining cornerbacks right there. Because Jair was on that list, and you got Asante Samuel, Rashul Douglas, and Stephon Gilmore, Kendall Fuller. There's some guys still out there. And I'm assuming these guys are going to land teams, especially when injuries pile up in camp. Because believe me, they're going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's needed. I mean, that is kind of like the one. And I guess the joker, the wild card, which is a total Pete Carroll's guy, is Ja'Cory Richardson. He runs like a 4.36. He's like 6'3". So again, prototypical Pete Carroll's type of player. The last regime drafted him, but I mean, I really haven't heard anything. Hey, Nation, have you guys heard anything about Ja'Cory Richardson? I haven't. So I mean, when you don't hear stuff, then it just makes you think, okay, you're not doing so hot.
Or you got to wait for the pads to come on, because some of these guys shine when the armor gets on, man. This is why it's so hard for me to talk about OTAs and minicamp. Like, as Captain Jack used to say, it reminds me of the Underwear Olympics. It's just getting these guys ready for camp, in my opinion. Like I know this is what we have to talk about because this is what our teams have been doing these last few weeks, but it is so tough for me to talk about this because everybody looks good running against air, right? No cornerbacks are trying to get hurt. Nobody's trying to get any unnecessary injuries, and these rookies are coming in sometimes raw, sometimes they know what they're doing, and it's just I'm just getting ready for preseason. For me, that's when I can start seeing guys like, okay, how are they going to play against dudes who are actually trying to make a team? And personally, I'm excited for my team having 4 preseason games because we get to see that. We get an extra look at some of these guys, these back end dudes.
Wow, you guys got 4 preseason games? How did that work out? How do you get a 4th when everyone's got 3?
We have the Hall of Fame game against the Detroit Lions in Canton. So
I like that. Again, we kind of talked a little bit about
that a few years ago, right, Jack?
Possibly. I mean,
I
don't remember a couple years ago. It's like, the years have been so bad, you just kind of want to forget a lot of them. But so yeah, preseason, nah, I'm not into all that. That many years ago. But at the same time, it's like to get that 4th preseason game. For the guys that are really on the bubble, to get the opportunity to show it. I like it. The NFL's, they talked about, let's get rid of a preseason game and, have that 18-game schedule. But again, we talked about this before, and I know Richie said this, but then you lose the opportunity to see the young kids who potentially could either make your roster or not make your roster because you're not getting enough, enough touches, enough plays.
They can add another game. They can make more money, raise the cap. To be honest with you, I think it's watering the game down. Getting rid of preseason games, they're boring, but you're also watering the game down. Just like the quarterbacks, they're coming in this league, in my opinion. Most of these quarterbacks, they have to run a college system just to even survive the first couple of years when they come in this league because they're not developed, because they bounce around to other teams. And, and we're in the NIL days, the wild, wild west in college, which is a mercenary, deal in college, which is, it's, in my opinion, it's ruining the game. You got, JUCO players that, remember everybody, like some of the greatest players in the NFL came from JUCO schools, right? And then they transferred into D1s, or something happened in a D1, they go to JUCO, they get out of JUCO, right? And it's this pay to play era we're in, and they got to fix it, man, because in my opinion, it's not good for the NFL. And I right now, I think college is having to deal with it, but it's like coming down where it's going to start affecting the NFL. And I don't want to see that day, because we're just going to see some subpar. It's just going to be bad play all around, in my opinion.
Yeah, that transfer pool, stuff is kind of wild. You think about it, it's like these kids are like, oh, okay, you know what? Hey, I can get $100,000, over here versus, playing here. And if they're all thinking about just going to the NFL, that's kind of nice for them, or just take their money and run if they don't make the NFL. But it really does affect the programs that are out there. There's no doubt about that.
Well, you also have the all this NIL money and the other things that are coming into play. And so a lot of these guys are like withholding from performing in like practices and team activities and things like that, because they believe that their money is greater if they were to not participate and do that kind of thing. It's just, what it's ultimately doing is it's putting money ahead of football. And there needs to be a bit of a better balance. I think there needs to be maybe some additional strings attached to the NIL money and the other stuff. I agree, by the way, that some of these players, they're bringing in just obscene amounts of money for their respective colleges. And I think it's unfair that these guys put so much work and effort in, but then don't actually get compensated back in a financial dollar.
Sure, that's the true definition of NIL, though, Richie.
But what I think needs to happen is, I think in order for you to qualify for that, I think you need to practice. I think you need to be present for all of those team activities. I think you need to do all of those different things. And I think that unless they do those things, I think that should disqualify them.
I mean, personally,
and whether or not that fixes it, I don't know. But to your point, though, is constantly going in the transfer portal and trying to seek signing bonuses by doing certain things for certain stuff and all that kind of stuff. You're watering down the quality of the game at the college level, which will then in turn hinder the quality of play at the NFL level. And the NFL is then further curbing the impact by removing, say, preseason, etc. And what we're really seeing actually is the first game or two of the regular season at the NFL, we're seeing errors that we never saw in years past occur with teams on the field. And really, the only teams that you see that don't make those sorts of errors are the ones that were able to retain the majority of their roster. So they had the natural cohesion from the year prior. And then they're able to actually look, competent, if you will, on the field for the most part in the first game or two of the NFL season. And that's why the first game or two, when you look at the NFL schedule, I don't care who you play. If I'm not mistaken, DZ, your challenge is you have divisional opponents for the first 3 games, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And so then the question is like, okay, you play the Broncos. Yeah, so you play the Broncos, and the Broncos have retained the overwhelming majority of their roster. Like we basically had very little turnover, and we added additional pieces. So that would potentially put us in a position where we would end up with that natural cohesion, and our coaching staff is largely the same, et cetera, et cetera. For the Chiefs, they lost a few guys that were kind of key cogs. And for the Las Vegas Raiders, you want them to churn through guys because they were not as successful as they would have preferred last season. And they have a new head coach. And that new head coach is going to have a different vision for the team. So fair enough. As a Raiders fan, I would want my team to have some churn, some move, and some shifting around, because I want the players that are on my team to be the types of guys that my new head coach wants.
Yeah, there's going to be some interesting camp battles for sure. Hey, and Piano Man, I'm glad you're talking Chargers, bro. I appreciate that. So thank you for doing that.
Now, DZ, I would like to shift over to the Chargers now that we've kind of covered the Raiders off a little bit there. And,
Sure.
I actually like quite a few of Piano Man or Hero's comments.
Hero.
That makes more sense. So we're talking Team America at that point. Hero.
Good movie.
Yeah, great movie. So let's have you start kind of going through some of this stuff, and then we'll start bringing up Piano Man's comments here and start going into some of them because he's made some interesting points, certainly some spicy takes in there as well, which is fine. And we'll go from there.
Well, like I kind of said earlier, I really don't fall into this trap with Minicamp, until the pads come on. That's when I start paying it more. I mean, it's not like I'm not paying attention, but it seems like the generation below me gets super excited about, dudes running and catching balls, against nobodies, right? Like usually they'll have the ones catching balls against some 7th round draft pick or some UDFA, and they're like, oh my God, it's amazing. And, the Chargers receiver, it's true. I mean, one thing though about that comment is one of our 5th round picks, Keandre Lambert-Smith, hasn't been out there all camp. He's been dealing with an injury. I'm like, how are these guys injured? They haven't done anything. And that's including us bringing back Mike Williams, who hasn't participated in camp. He's been banged up. What's new? It's like a broken record, right? Like, he leaves the Chargers, plays 18 games with 2 different teams, comes back to the Chargers, and now is not available for camp. But, he is a vet, so I expect him to be ready for camp. If he's not, Smith, our 2nd round pick, is going to take his spot, which I have 0 issues with because that's what he was drafted for. But, there's been a few guys that have stood out in camp, and that's last year's pick, Tarheeb Still, and cornerback. This guy's been training with exclusively Khalil Mack every day, in the facility, which, like, Khalil's an edge guy. This guy's a cornerback, but, training with a dude like that every day, that's gonna do you some good, especially with a savvy vet like Khalil. And another guy, I'm just looking at another guy, Joe Alt. A lot of the coaches mentioned Joe, coming in, even better, obviously, coming in year 2, knowing what you're going to expect, and him having a sour taste in his mouth from how last season went, especially against Houston. That guy felt like he, let himself down and the team, and he wanted to get better. So I applaud him on that. This guy, man, Joe Alt, he's easily becoming one of my favorites. Like, this guy is it's got to be in the genes, his father being a longtime Kansas City Chief, and then him, he's just a stud, and Jack probably knows that already.
Oh my God, he's one of my favorites. When you guys picked him up and got him in the draft at number 5, it hurt. I'm like, but I love watching that kid play. Watched him all 4 years at Notre Dame, and then watched what he did against Max Crosby. I mean, 11 times they went against each other. 0 quarterback pressures. I mean, in my mind, if you just fast forward, until he retires, you can just throw on that gold jacket right now.
That's way premature, but I like the way you're thinking, Jack, and the way he played, like, that's not easy coming in as a rook going against some elite edges, in the league. Another guy that is impressed the whole Charter fan base and the coaches was the guy they traded up for in the draft, Aronde Gadsden, tight end out of Syracuse. He was a wide receiver. He came into college, I think, $190. The guy, I think, left college or started playing. He had 4 different offensive coordinators in college, which Justin Herbert knows something about that, just being in the league. I think right now in camp he weighs 250, which is really good. That's where you want your tight end to kind of be. I could see 230 to 260s. I mean, you have hybrid guys. Like we have a hybrid guy, Tucker Fisk, who's a tight end. He's a massive human, but just more of a blocker. But this Arande Gazin guy, he's been riding his bike to the practice facilities. It's like an 8-minute ride. Gets there at 5 a.m. Works his tail off, watches film, and something he does that the head trainer, Ben Herbert, kind of suggested to him is he walks through his plays, before the day. He's on the field walking through his plays. And it's good. He's still a newer guy at being a tight end. So I think he's going to have some impact this season, but not necessarily the other ways that other fans think he's going to be. I think that it's really tough being a rookie tight end coming into the league. Now, Jack's team with Brock Bowers, that's a different story. Brock's, in my opinion, is a generational player, played tight end in Georgia at an elite school at an elite level. This guy's played tight end, more of a pass catching role. And the coach who coached Darren Waller said that this guy reminds him of Darren Waller. There's aspects of him and his game that reminds him of Darren Waller. So, but
that's not a bad thing to have.
But this guy is bigger, stronger, and faster than Darren Waller. So now Darren Waller was a stud.
Waller was tall. He was 6'7". Brock Bowers is 6'3".
Okay, so I don't think Gazin's 6'7", but yeah. Sorry for interrupting, but I don't think he's 6. I think he's 6'4". Somebody can correct me.
But that's what you want as your tight end. You had 6'4", 6'5", like you said, 250 pounds. And if he's a wide receiver, then he knows how to run routes.
Raider Shield, yes, I agree.
Bishop?
It's not football yet. But we got to talk about something, and I still love talking ball. So I'm really excited about this guy, and if they got him in the 5th round, they traded up for this guy. I'm all aboard. And he's all the pressures. He had a day where he caught like 7 balls. You know how hard that is in camp, especially these little camps having QBs thrown to you. Catch 7 balls in one day that's pretty good because there's a lot of mouths to feed in these camps right now. But I'm excited for him, and I want to see what these pads come on. And one thing this offense was missing last season was an in-line tight end that could catch balls, that could as a playmaker. And obviously another guy that stood out was Derwin James, another dude. In my opinion, I think between him and the guy in Baltimore, why am I forgetting his name? Oh God. Stud. Anyways, I got 1A and 1B in the best safeties in the league. And then there's some other safeties who I think are really good. But, Derwin coming into the league, year 2 in this system with Jesse Minter, he's going to play more, in the box as a nickel like Jack you were talking about with Chin. And the sky's the limit for this guy, especially with something I'll talk about later if we have time about my edge department. Would be huge. And then another guy that, stood out in camp is, no brainer is Ladd McConkey. This guy's came in bigger, faster, stronger, It's not hard to do when you're built like a 15-year-old boy. Sorry, Ladd, I hope you don't ever see this, but I expect him to be a stud, and he's going to warrant a lot of attention from a lot of teams, which I think will help the other receivers get open because this guy, I think it was like week 3 to 5. That's when teams started shading this guy. They started going, oh, okay, we got to pay attention to him. I think this season you're going to see a lot of defenses key around Ladd McConkey. And they're going to say, Justin, throw to some of these other guys, and hopefully some of these rooks or, Piano Man mentioned earlier, one of my favorite additions to this team is Tyler Conklin, one of my favorite free agent acquisition. So we'll see. But those are the guys that impress in camp. And let's see,
the
now,
DZ, I got a question for you, just because I am a Notre Dame fan, and that's another thing. Like Sacktown, was in the chat earlier. Then we got Nab 93, Raiders Shield family. He's also a Notre Dame fan. So how is Cam Hart? What have you heard about him? During your OTA?
I have not heard about anything from him for weeks now. So I know that he was cleared to practice, but I haven't heard his name pop up. But he is a big part of the plans, because I'll be honest with you guys, like if Cam, which is very possible considering his injury history, or Tarheeb go down, our cornerback room isn't that great in my opinion. It's like you're going, oh boy, here we go. But the thing I have faith in is our defensive coordinator. They filled in a lot of guys last season. They brought in a lot of guys off the street that they plug and play, and who did a serviceable job. They even made Eli Apple look really good for 2 games before he got hurt. So there's that. But these are the 2 young rooks that everybody's hoping are the future, on both sides of the defense, and Cam Hart and Tarheeb still. But I haven't heard his name, and I hope that he's out there ready to rock when the pads come on. But other than that, like Raider Shield family said, it's really tough to talk about this because the pads are not in, and especially this style of Charger offense that they're going to want to run. That's when we start to see, like, hey, is this going to work? Because they want to run the ball, with this, and they're messing with the O-line, Zion Johnson, Bradley Bozeman. They're moving guys in. Jack, you sent me something. The Chargers signed another dude, got rid of another tackle. Marshall's starting left tackle. I think, that's just going to be a camp body. He looks impressive, but other than that, I don't know anything about him. But
yeah, I didn't know anything about him either. But as soon as I saw it, I wanted to send it to you to get your opinion on it.
Yeah, to be honest, I just didn't have one. I'm a bad guy at this time of the year in football, to be honest with you. The most thing I'm excited about is the Chargers announced we're getting 2 new alternate jerseys. I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. Let's see, because I think we're like 0-1 in our Navy uniforms. I don't think we've won a game. So I'm like, get rid of those or redesign those, do something, because those are bad luck jerseys. And but Raiders Piano Man said something. There is some rumors that they might be going to the I think it was the late 90s, early 2000s throwbacks, redesign of that with a Navy helmet. And, the kind of the style that Jim Harbaugh wore when he played for the Chargers. LT, Gates, Seau, all those guys. And then there's another one.
That would be very fitting, right?
Yeah.
That would be very fitting. In fact, you would be awesome. The Chargers are creative enough to do this. You have Harbaugh be the dude that walks out for your promo video in that old throwback uniform, and have him be the dude that walks out for your social media video.
I'm sure they've got that set up with their social media.
Like
they,
I'm like that'd be amazing. Like that'd be like what a way of honoring, the like almost old school Harbaugh look, slightly updated, and then have him kind of walk out. Like I could totally see something like that. That'd be pretty cool.
Those jerseys hold like a special place in my heart. Like that's, in my opinion, those are some of the best teams, but also some of the most cursed teams. So it's like, there was a time we had the best offense and defense in the league, and they didn't win. They got knocked out. I think it was the Jets or whoever knocked us out, Rex Ryan's Jets or whatever. But I don't know if that was the year, but I'm just remembering those. I'm like, so all these young fans are like, we want the Navies back. And I get it because they're iconic, but I'm like, man, it's a tough place for me. I was hoping there was another rumor too. This, Piano Man did mention it, and I saw it on Reddit, and I don't know if I'm on board with this. an
What's
all gold setup, and I'm
Oh.
like, I don't know, man. I think it was called something Sunshine, like Sunshine Gold was the rumor, and I know the Rams have like an all yellow kit, and to be honest with you, I think it looks hideous. It's
I don't
probably
like it.
fun for TV, but I don't know if I could get on board with that.
Well, it's
but
kind of like
look,
the Boston Red Sox wearing green. It's like, come on, you guys are red and gray or red and white, but you guys got probably the second or third best looking unis with your powder blues.
yeah.
I mean,
our division is iconic, right, Jack? Like,
it's so iconic. And Nabman, no, I don't want to see the black on black. I mean, the Raiders they've had one different jersey. They're old school, 70s, away game jersey, but and then of course, they've never had a change. And I like that tradition. I guess maybe I'm old school. And I just see when teams go to some wacky kind of looking jerseys, it's like, okay, go to what looks great. So again, the Broncos jerseys in the 90s, man, those were fire. I thought those looked super sharp. So
Jack, out of you guys, I want to see black pants, black jersey, all black. I want to see blacked out kind of numbers on the jerseys, or maybe with a silver outline at best, just so you can actually see it on TV.
I think that's what Nabman was talking about.
Yeah, I want to see a matte black Raiders helmet, but then what I want is full silver cleats, and I think that would look absolutely sharp. I actually think that would look pretty slick on screen.
That better be a night game where those guys will burst into flames.
But no, seriously, I actually think that would be a pretty interesting look, and I think it would be a pretty popular jersey sale for your fan base, because I think that would look absolutely sweet. I do, and look, I totally get it. Everyone has their own team fan favorite stuff, and they're like, I want the old D on this and I want this on that, and I totally get it. When I thought my Broncos were redesigning their old retro jerseys, I didn't think they were going to go full old school. I love the Denver D because I think that's just kind of an iconic logo look, but I truly thought that they were going to try to update that old logo by taking the Denver D and then kind of imposing the new logo over, superimposed on the D as part of a retro comeback, but they never did that. They fully appeased the fans and said, here's the old logo, let's go. Now, they're my favorite uniforms that we wear on the field because I just think they're so iconic from an era where the Broncos were so successful that it's hard to kind of say I don't like it. But the Broncos are navy and orange, and there's a lighter blue color on that, which, while it's iconic, I would have liked to have seen it updated with the navy blue that is now the Denver Broncos coloring, to kind of, again, you got to tie old and new together here a little bit, and I'd like to see kind of all of our teams just kind of stay true to who they are now, not necessarily do a full throwback, because I think it's time to progress forward but remember the past.
I think
Maranovich, I can see that one right there. I think that makes sense in the way of silver numbers. And by the way, salute, brother. But I will say this: your 1990 jersey, I like that darker blue as well. I think it's a sharper looking color for your Broncos for the contrast versus that lighter blue.
I think that they did these jerseys on there's a reasoning for it. I think it has to do with the updated TV. How we view the games from home. And all these teams have gone with more of a minimalistic style, especially our division as a whole has gone with this. And, as being an older fan, I reminisce with the Reebok days, those jerseys, how they had so much detail in them, I remember buying Chargers jerseys back in San Diego, and, they had the triple stitch, they had the multi-layer numbers. Now it's just, one color and maybe a highlight or something like that. And they're not even stitched on. They're these, I believe they're screen printed, even for the league and stuff. So it's kind of sucks they went that way, but I think it's what's best for TV and how they film the games, how they broadcast the games. It really pops, so And then,
So
you
let me
know,
ask
the
you guys
Chargers.
this question. It's not an AFC West question, but since we're talking jerseys, if you can pick a team in the NFL that really needs a jersey, change, who would you say? For me, it would be like the Cleveland Browns. I mean, I don't know. I just never liked those jerseys. They just don't look good.
They're iconic, in my opinion. Like, somebody's got to wear them. Why not them? You know, like Cleveland's just a hard-nosed, blue-collar town. But they don't bother me much. I don't know.
Looked like kind of
I'm
like
not a fan
baseball,
of.
like the old Houston Astros when they had that rainbow stripe when they played it at.
Yeah, I remember
Oh
that.
God, those things were hideous.
I feel you on that. I don't know who would need to have updated jerseys. To be honest with you, I'm not a fan of Seahawks neon green stuff. I know,
That's what
like
Matt
it
said.
was. I know it was like really cool when it popped out. I think now, but I'm not a Seahawks fan, but I'm now over it. I do like when they use highlights. To me, I love the Seahawks old uniforms, and I know they brought them back. Right, they had the throwback last season, but with the silver helmets with the Seahawk on the side. You know, kind of giving homage to the native tribes and stuff who are in that Pacific Northwest area. Those might be one of my favorite uniforms of all time in the NFL for the Seahawks. I like everybody in our division's uniforms. And the Chiefs haven't changed a thing. The Raiders haven't changed a thing. You know, I like that the Chargers updated theirs to the powder blue, even though personally as a fan, I don't like rocking powder blue out of my day-to-day stuff. So, I'm wearing a black hat. So if they do go with a more of a navy scheme, then I'll rock that. Like, I like wearing more of a darker stuff when I'm out. So that's just me personally. But on game days, it pops,
It does pop.
So there's that.
So are there any other players that from the, I think Hero has gone ahead and given us a lot of wide receiver stuff. Now, in fairness, I actually think that is a correct take in the landscape we're in right now.
Yeah.
I think the problem you have is you're not going to get a great assessment on your D linemen. You're not going to get a great assessment on your running backs. You're not going to get offensive lineman assessments very well because there's no pads on here. So I really do think that is a pretty good focus right now for these beat writers as well as fanalists and everything else to really look at these guys that are the more skill type players that are not running backs, because running backs are technically deemed skill players. And then to kind of get a rough idea on what they're seeing from certain guys in terms of, are the cornerbacks looking like they're able to stick with the wide receivers in coverage? You're not necessarily going to get the physicality from them or anything like that, but can they stick with the wide receivers in coverage? Are they able to track the ball? Are they able to maybe get interceptions in these kind of team type drills and that kind of stuff? Those are big time questions, things that are good to look at and good to assess. Are you seeing anything else come out of kind of your group? I mean, I think the tight end was a great call out there, because that's literally a 3-year position. If you're due, I mean, let's put it this way. The Brock Bowers breakout season we saw last year, like, that's like lotto ticket. Like, that doesn't happen really in the NFL to at all. You get them from time to time, and they're very rare.
There was
the more common one is you have a tight end who starts out and does okay, and then they do way better in year 2. And then your ideal scenario is they just go off in year 3.
Well, there was a stat I saw about tight ends, and it's kind of similar to what you just said, but it was like these tight ends really don't blossom until their second contracts almost. We've been spoiled these last few seasons with some of these like elite guys coming in, Laporta, Bowers, McBride in Arizona, who I think, Laporta got hurt last season, so he didn't really have a really good season. But, some of the top end of, tight ends. So it's like, if you can catch them and develop and you can see the vision, you don't let them go. But once you let them go, they get on another team. one reason I'm excited about Conklin is this guy put up numbers every year for the Jets, but he played with like 10 different quarterbacks, and we all know the Jets' history with quarterbacks. It wasn't good.
Right.
So the fact that he's feeling good and they're working on chemistry, him and Justin, I feel really excited. I'm really excited about that because this guy can line out wide, just like, he can block in line, things like that. So,
well, and if you're getting comped, the Raiders' old tight end, I mean, he was damn good. He broke a record. So if that's the comp, you gotta really like that. What's up, Furpo?
What's going on, guys? Furpo's really excited. Yeah, seen that a lot. But there's another thing that's kind of been bugging the Charger fan base. Speaking of wide receivers, is this guy Jalen Reagor. Remember, he was a first-round pick years ago by the Eagles, and this guy hasn't shown anything to us fans. Last season he caught like a deep bomb and fumbled it like in the at the 3-yard line or something, and the team got it back. I forget which team that was against. I don't know if that was against the Broncos. It might have been. I'm not sure if it was Broncos. Piano might correct me, but they are really, for some reason, trying to make this guy a thing. And Charger fans, we are not understanding why. And I think I have like a little conspiracy theory why. It's something I mentioned a few weeks ago that the wide receiver coach said about these rookies coming in is that these rookies aren't up to shape, up to par for their standards coming in. So I'm assuming that they better be when the pads come on, or they're not going to get much playing time. But
well, that's a Harbaugh thing. He's a hard-nosed football coach. He's a total throwback, and it's like he ain't going to put up with that for sure.
Yes, because Trey Harris, I mean, that's the guy everybody's super excited about, and it's been pretty quiet with him. So, that's everybody's paying attention to him. And then obviously Quentin Johnston, who, I mean, don't get me started on him. That's another guy that they've got, slotted as in your starter. And the coaches love him. It's just us fans, what are we? We're all fanalists, right? We love our teams. We want to win. We've seen what this guy's done. He's only had 3 games where he got more than 60 yards. That's, to me, that's a problem. That's inconsistency is a problem, in my opinion. You need to be consistent as a wide receiver, like if you're going to be, last season he was supposed to be that number 2 or whatever, and he had 1 good game, and that was against the Raiders, in my opinion.
Figures. Everyone had good games against us.
I mean, that was when you guys were decimated with injuries at that time.
So I thought I'd dive into the Denver Broncos and our combination of camps. We kind of already covered off the rookie minicamp stuff in a few shows ago, and so I do want to reiterate something from there, which is Clay Webb. I really do think that this is a dude that needs to be paid attention to for my Denver Broncos. He is a guy that I have heard almost nothing about come minicamp, but I suspect that we're going to start hearing a lot from him as we start getting into the training camp. With a mandatory
Why does
training
his
camp
name sound familiar?
He is the dude that has just had his lawsuit dropped and or eliminated for his high school incident of
yes, that's why
of feeding the guy
my old brain is like
man juice Gatorade.
Yes. Okay.
We'll call it the semen special. Okay. Yeah. So anyways, it was
special.
it was the spiked Gatorade that he gave there. Obviously made a mistake, has owned up to it. Apparently, according to Sean Payton, he has raved about the quality of this kid and the fact that he has owned his mistake as a young man. Like, let's be real. The dude did this back when he was in like early mid high school. So like you're talking like 14, 15, 16 years old at best. Okay. Man, the crap that I did at 14, 15, 16, I will not disclose on air because my parents might hear it. Okay.
Okay, so he's a guard.
Right.
Okay.
Well, no, he's a guard / center.
Okay.
And I kind of see him, Jack, if I'm going to be honest, he reminds me a little bit of like the JPJ kind of deal where he's that kind of aggressor. He's that type of guy. He's that kind of player. He's the guy that's
Oh, then you got to be excited.
Yeah, well, I'm stoked, actually. I really think that he's got that kind of potential. When you see what he did in college, you see how he played. The only reason why his stock fell is because there was this lingering lawsuit that has just been resolved. I'm really excited for what he might bring to the table. Because of his versatility as well, he has a potential to come in and maybe replace or fill in for Powers if Powers doesn't maintain a high level of play. And I really am pretty excited about what he's going to bring to the table. But as I just finished saying, and DZ and Jack, you kind of all, we're in violent agreement, as they say. You're not going to really get a true understanding of what these offensive and defensive linemen are until pads come on. So that's in a few weeks' time anyway. So we're going to go ahead.
But that's an exciting prospect. He was that versatile, and he's got that mean streak like a JPJ. I respect that, as an offensive lineman.
I agree.
You want to just see those offensive linemen like you just pancake guys, get nasty with them. So
I agree.
That's kind of scary. I don't know if I like that.
Yeah, so I got a couple other stuff. Just you probably don't, but so I got a couple general takeaways that I'll just kind of bullet point off here and just kind of give a brief summary, and then we'll kind of discuss as a group. Bo Nix is looking really sharp at all these places. We see he's getting the ball out quick. He's throwing crisp passes, and more importantly, he is commanding the rest of the offensive players and saying, do this, do that, run it this way, do this, which is exactly what you want from a second-year quarterback. DZ, you've gone through this a little bit with Herbert already.
Taking over the team.
Take some of those aggressive steps. Taking over the team, which is exactly what you want. Not what everyone else would want from our quarterback, because you want to see the guy just, obviously burn out and fail. But from a Denver Broncos fan perspective, that's exactly what you want to hear from your second-year quarterback.
Richie, for some reason, I see nothing but Bronco fans just losing their minds over the most ridiculous things about Bo Nix right now. They're excited. Bronco country is, Bronco.
Why wouldn't you be? I mean, a young quarterback, third in voting for Rookie of the Year, and it's an impressive first season, and get thrown under the in the fire, and you'll come up above and beyond, and now you're like what Richie just said. Now he's taking charge.
And the one thing that I liked about him, real quick, is he got better as the season went on. In my opinion,
he did.
He got better. It's not like he flashed and then was like went away. No, he did. The other thing, got better.
Correct. He also made mistakes, and you would see him correct them over the course of the season. Now, it's one season, only a handful of games, so you can't expect him to correct everything. You have to be realistic in terms of your expectations of a rookie quarterback. But what you did see from him is quick corrections on major issues, and more importantly, he got better as the playbook opened up more to him. That's actually even more important as a general comment. So when he first started the season, he had a very limited playbook and was given only a small kind of glimpse and very controlled in terms of what he was allowed to do. What you ended up getting from him was, as Peyton expanded out and gave him more and more pages of that playbook to then run with and use, Bo Nix didn't spiral. He didn't flounder. He didn't start throwing random sailing interceptions all the time and look like a fish out of water as more and more kind of as the floodgates open, so to speak. He actually improved. He got better. He progressed further. He was able to read the field better. He was able to do more, and that's, I think, why you're seeing a lot of Broncos fans just kind of saying, "Okay,
they're excited, man."
Yes.
Well, you get excited. I hate it. Man, that's kind of scary.
Keyword finally.
Yeah.
That's a keyword in Broncos fan base now.
Yeah.
He's good, and kind of talking about Bo. We kind of brought this up earlier in this episode. This is a guy that had a ton of starts under his belts coming into the league, and that's what teams value. That's what they want, and you saw it his first year, like. He knew what he was doing. He made mistakes. It's the NFL. Everybody's going to make mistakes. This is the elite of the elite in this game. So it's like, look at what the Colts. They drafted a guy. Oh, that's
no. I can see that. I mean, because Bo's going to be scary. Okay, I'm going to say that. I'm like the kid is growing. You just don't know where the ceiling is with Bo
here. Right, I agree. Sorry, just on this comment here, I have to assume, Dark, that what you're saying here is Bo Nix's receivers were not progressing as fast as he was. I agree with that last season. I do think, though, you saw Franklin start to come into his own a little bit near the back end of last season. Vele was really starting to turn on at the back end of last season as well. And then you saw Marvin Mims finally find kind of the uses that he has. Basically, Sean Payton finally started using Marvin Mims the way he was in college. Marvin Mims was used as an all-around, like all over the place player, and Sean Payton finally said, "Okay, fine, we'll just do the same." And then Marvin Mims said, "No problem. I can absolutely do exactly that." And then you started seeing Mims not only as a two-time Pro Bowl return guy, right? Like he's on a trajectory right now that if he can start putting up some additional stats at the returner position in terms of touchdowns on returns, scores on returns, and he continues his current trajectory, and if he can go Pro Bowl, he really actually is in some conversations for gold jacket only as a return guy, not even as a skill player, because he's stacking these accolades at the return position, which are quite substantial and are frankly going under the radar. But
I like your weapons, Richie. I think
I digress, though.
I like the Broncos' weapons. They're doing a good job setting up talent around Bo. They've got bringing Evan Ingram and then J.K. Dobbins, that vet presence, that wide receiver core. I mean, this should be a really good season for the offense in Denver.
So Rich, I do have a question for you about your wide receiver. So I know Mims is a fast kid. Is there anybody else that's on the roster that?
I'm repping my Tim Patrick jersey here just because the Broncos have been in a long-standing search to effectively get that, that Tim Patrick staple replacement on the roster. And Vele is certainly showing out that he can be that guy. We also have another guy that we'll be talking about later on once I get through the rest of my list here, as well as a UDFA guy who I believe will start popping come training camp, as well as preseason. It'll just depend on whether or not I think we talked about him as Jaquan Davis, if I'm not mistaken, is his name. He's 6'4", 6'5", about 210 in that kind of general weight class there, and he runs a 4.3.
Oh, geez. Okay, there you go. You answered my question.
Feeding these kids, man.
Right? So, it's like.
So, with regards to that, I do think, Gerald, nice to see you again. Thank you for joining the show. If you have questions or comments on what you have heard from our Denver Broncos during minicamp, also the OTAs or rookie minicamp, go ahead and leave those comments down below, and we will read them aloud, and I'll incorporate them into what I'm about to bring up in terms of what I have heard and what I have seen. You tied into wide receivers, Jack, and I'm just going to kind of go through a clustered group here that have all had some very
Jarrell, sir.
Jarrell.
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 Right?
Jarrell.
Cool.
Jarrell.
One thing I will say is in Canada, a bunch of names that are pronounced differently north of the border as they are south. It's just an interesting thing. For example, just a word that you guys use, you say foyer for your front halls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where it's foyer, based on the fact that it's French as a word. And trust me, there's a whole whack of other names that are pronounced differently south than they are where I am, and I'm from Canada, so you're going to have to forgive the fact that I'm going to make errors like that on a regular basis. It just is what it is. But just grouping everything together, we had Troy Franklin, who has had some incredible accolades come out of all of his participation with the team. And then we also have, sorry, I got some backup here from the other Canadian that's in the in the comment section. So that's good to know. So we have Troy Franklin, and then we also have Pat Bryant. Pat Bryant has had a ton of stuff come out about just his route running, what he's shown on the field, all that sort of thing, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a lot of just chatter in Broncos country about all of that kind of stuff. And then there's a bunch of other guys that we're not going to hear a ton about. And this is the unfortunate fact about the current regime for my Denver Broncos and in Broncos country in general. They are a seasoned veteran class of folks that are running the Denver Broncos now. Obviously, the ownership group is still somewhat new, but that's why you bring in Sean Payton. Sean Payton is notoriously tight-lipped about having press present and limiting the amount of press access to OTAs, minicamps, et cetera, and fans as well, because what he's wanting to do is avoid those video cameras. You know what I mean? He's not wanting those video cameras or photos, et cetera, because he doesn't want other teams to get kind of that bulletin board stuff or that training stuff to kind of say, oh, that's what they're doing over there. As a result, there is not a lot of information that has come out under this regime, and this year has been even tighter and more controlled over what has come out than even the year prior. So this has been a bit of a challenge pulling details and data and information from the Denver Broncos. Nonetheless, we all have our connections, we all know people and all that kind of stuff, and so we can get some information from different folks. However, it's just very limited and very, very sparse. So
do they keep a lot of the press at it, their practices and so forth? Does that, I know Heat might be tight-lipped, but
1 day.
1 day, okay. That makes it hard.
1 day, right? So anyways, those are the wide receivers. You kind of mentioned those guys. You mentioned those, the players where you said, hey, the skill guys are really the ones that are popping in this sort of, these types of environments, right? No pads, no contact, that sort of thing. So the guys that are really going to show out are going to be your pass catchers and skill guys and that sort of thing. What we have heard, obviously, is, and this is going to be interesting for you, Jack, is Estime continues to kind of slide down, it seems, in terms of overall favor, although he hasn't necessarily been slandered necessarily by the coach. But bringing in J.K. Dobbins, he is definitely going to be 1A or 1B.
Right.
So the first round draft pick, or the first round running back, or not the first round, but the second round running back, and RJ Harvey is definitely going to be the 1A or 1B, depending on where Sean kind of sees them, leveling out, etc. So then,
thank you for bringing that up, because I was going to ask you about that. So thank you for talking about it.
Right, and so now the question becomes: Is Audric Estime going to be the default number 3, which is not a bad number 3 to have on your team in terms of running back?
Hell no.
I think he shows some flashes. he showed some flashes in terms of what he could do last season. Although,
Jarrell, I'm not
near the
happy
end-
about it, buddy.
Right.
Okay.
Hey, as a Raiders
showed
fan, I
some
wasn't happy about it either. I thought he was gone. I'm like, get him out of the AFC West. Go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I
He
hate
showed
when
some
players
flashes.
stay in the division, man.
Yep. So Estime showed some flashes, but then he regressed heavily as the year went on. As I said on the show earlier, I do suspect he may have had an injury that went undisclosed. Just my,
I think that's your whole
you know,
running back group, though, Richie. As the year went on, just like something was wrong. Like, that, I mean, why they drafted RJ, right? Like, that group couldn't get it done when it mattered most. So, you know, you got two new dudes up there, and then Estime's probably going to be de facto 3 or 4, probably for goal lines, stuff like that, you know, or short yardage situations. But, you know, I didn't get it because I liked all you guys' running backs.
Yep.
McLaughlin, I really liked him.
Well, and then you end up with this really interesting kind of logjam within that 3 to 4 position in that, like, in those kind of back end of the roster of the running back room. So you have Audric Estime, Jaleel McLaughlin, Ben Watson, and Tyler Bidet. Now those are all, you know, reasonable guys. Like, those are all dudes that can play, and they can do so at an NFL level. Again, great problem to have as a Denver Broncos fan. Okay, calling it for what it is. Okay, that's a very good, very deep running back room that, with the right play calling and the right system and scheme and stuff, can do very well. But then the question is that, okay, you got RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins. Those are, you know, pencil them in pen because they're going to be there whether or not, you know, regardless, right? Like, you just basically say they're on the roster. Okay, cool. But then you end up with, is it Estime or is it Bidet? Right? Because those guys are very similar in terms of skill set and size. And then you have Watson and McLaughlin. And those are just really, really interesting position battles. Ben Watson's a former wide receiver who also runs the ball really well. Well, that's a really interesting prospect coming into year 2, getting past those kind of, you know, welcome to the NFL moments. You know what I mean? So can he outshine a guy like Jaleel McLaughlin because he's a better pass catcher because he's a natural wide receiver? That's what he played all throughout college, and he happens to be a running back. Tyler Bidet, an absolute stud at the running back position, and frankly was slated to be running back 2 before he got hurt in preseason last year, to be clear.
Wow.
Okay? And
So how many are you going to keep on the roster this year?
I believe there will be 4 running backs on the roster.
And you got to think 2 of those guys have to play special teams.
Correct.
Yeah. And then you're going to have your practice squad guys who, you know, knowing running backs, they do get injured, so you're going to need to call somebody up. Yeah.
Yeah, and whether or not we think, again, Sean Clayton likes to play a little bit of chess when it comes to the practice squad. So he might believe that some folks may want, say, a guy like Estime just because of recency bias. So he may keep Estime on the roster, but then think that he might be able to pass Bidet through to the practice squad because he's got less name recognition and less recency bias to him. It'll be interesting to kind of see how that room shapes up or works out.
Key, you said something key there, Richie. It's like these teams, front offices and coaches all have to be smart about who they decide to put on the practice squad because everybody's out there ready to poach guys. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So anyways, that's the running back room there. Those guys there, we're not going to really get a true handle on, though, until the training camp stuff with the pads and everything. So that's really not where I'm at. Where I do want to talk about, though, is Q Robinson. Now, he's the exception to the rule, not the rule. He is an edge guy, and every single person that I have heard come out from everywhere has said this guy is killing it. He was originally expected to be effectively a depth edge piece but a special teams ace. And all of the details that are coming from minicamp and from the rookie training camp and all the other stuff, the OTAs, the whole bit, is that this dude is likely going to be in the rotation for sure in the starting kind of rotational lines there in the edge room, which really does make our edge room now in a massive logjam. We have a lot of edge guys, and they had a huge production last year from our edge room. When you look at the two main guys in Cooper and Benito.
So
And
this
then
guy
you-
was your 4th-round pick from Alabama, right?
Correct.
He did not score well, but, I mean, he played at Alabama. He's got good height. He's got really long arms.
He's quick.
Yeah.
He's quick. He's quick, very quick. And so, again, with the right coaching, like if you get attributes, if you have attributes and work ethic, and you pair those together, and then you add in, elevated coaching, that can really be a deadly combination, because you can start getting these guys that are coming out that are UDFAs, like Shaq Barrett from my Denver Broncos. He's a UDFA from Colorado. He came out and absolutely destroyed it at the NFL level after a couple of years of being coached up. And so, it's not uncommon or unheard of. Jonathan Cooper, by the way, my Denver Broncos signed him to an extension, 7th-round draft pick. He had 10 sacks. He had 10 sacks last year.
That's crazy from a 7th-round draft pick. That's that's
so,
damn. That your GM is like,
But that's
Well,
what I'm saying,
dark.
right?
It's also the system you're in as well, but,
True.
that's not to discredit who he is as a player, but it's like if you're a good, player, you get knocked down in a draft and you get into a good system, you get, diamonds in the rough like that guy, man.
Yep. And then I also wanted to bring up, because this guy has come up in almost every conversation that I've heard, and not just from like the beat writers and the homers and all that stuff. Sean Payton himself made a comment about him in a couple of his pressers. Caleb Lohner, tight end,
right?
From Utah. He is a basketball convert. He is 6'7", 250 pounds, 23 years old.
yeah.
And he has been popping, according to both Sean Payton and the other beat writers. There has been some, interesting comparisons to him and, say, like Antonio Gates and, the usual suspects when you're talking about the basketball converts. However, our Denver Broncos are actually more familiar with a different guy that had a similar path to the NFL. And that is
Shannon?
Thomas.
Oh.
Julius Thomas.
Oh, I hated him.
So those of you who are not Denver Broncos fans may well remember Julius Thomas, actually, from his time with my Denver Broncos. He was a basketball convert. He was a primary basketball player in college, decided to move on to the football side of things. And in the 2013 season, that was where the Broncos set all those scoring records and all that kind of stuff. He had like 10 or 11 touchdowns or something crazy like that. He was a special player, did a lot of great things, and was fantastic with, what you traditionally see in the basketball court is boxing guys out. And because you have that as a natural skill set, it really does put you in a bit of an advantage. I mean, and this dude's literally 6'7". Like, it's not like it's 6'7" in college and now he's, coming to the NFL like, well, actually he was 6'5". This guy measures out at 6'7". Like, that is one tall dude. And it's 250 pounds. That's a good weight. Like, that's a
if you
very
can pick
good
up,
weight.
if like the Chargers had a guy 6 foot, I think he was 6'8", 6'9", 6'7", something like that. And when he was healthy, man, what a great red zone threat. You just get in the corner and, you jump up, right? Like, especially if a quarterback's got really good accuracy.
Right.
It's just these guys that get in that length that are not playing, like, say, offensive line or whatever. For some reason, look, and maybe it's not always, they're fragile. First, they break easily. But when they're healthy, they can be really good, gadget players or something like that. With that, but you said 250, so that's a decent weight for him. So yeah, that's just my experience with these super tall guys, because the Chargers experimented with some of these really tall guys before.
I'd like to see him get up to about 260.
Yeah.
Right in that general weight range. I don't want him to get too heavy, because then you start losing your speed a little bit, just because you're not used to being. That was Antonio Gates, if I'm not mistaken. Wasn't he? He was a former basketball player, right?
Yeah, Gates.
Came out of Kent State. He's being inducted into the Hall of Fame this season. So. Yeah,
and rightfully so. He was elite.
He earned it.
He was elite, to say the least, at his position. Jimmy Graham, Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez,
yeah.
Shannon Sharp, kind of fit that kind of general mold of those pass-catching tight ends that kind of changed the game. And this guy is certainly getting accolades from the coaching staff. So just to be clear, I see Caleb, if he continues this trajectory and really does show out through preseason, I would expect to see him start with the threes, like the kind of the third kind of wave guys. And so long as he continues this trajectory, he could just as soon end up playing with the ones and the twos from a competition perspective, because I think Sean Payton's going to want to kind of gauge, okay, where are you really? Like where are you on this sliding scale in my tight end room? Because really, once you get past Troutman, you start opening up. I really like Troutman as well. You start to really open up. You have Troutman and you have what's the guy's name? You signed
your free agent that you signed.
Yeah. Oh,
Ingram.
I can't believe it. Ingram.
There
so
you
once
go.
you have Troutman and Ingram, you kind of go 1A, 1B, depending on the type of play you're trying to run. And then you got Adkins, who's your fullback, pass-catching, blocking tight end as well. So I think you get those three that are kind of a lock. And then you end up with Lohner and Kroll, who are kind of in the mix there to say, okay, well, which one of them is actually better, though? Like which one would you actually want to keep? Would you want to keep a young rookie here who's got a potential tremendous upside? Or would you want to bring in Kroll, who you hope maybe continues to take steps forward? It'll be really, really interesting to kind of see what happens. And the reason why I bring up Adkins and the reason why I potentially see 4 tight ends on the roster is because we're going to want to run the ball more to kind of allow Bo to continue to progress forward in his career and continue to be able to control clock in different games. I do think that what we might be doing is eliminating the true fullback on our roster in Burton. And I believe we may be moving to get Adkins into that tight end fullback hybrid role to save that additional roster spot, because we're starting to get
makes sense.
We're starting to get some doing. But we're starting to get some of these young rookies at the wide receiver and the edge position, and some of even our offensive line guys that are massive value positions, like big time value spots. And we're going to probably need to sacrifice the fullback position, the true fullback position, in order to free up one of those additional roster spots, in my opinion.
Well, versatility is the game, right, guys? So, yeah. I mean, if you can play 2 positions versus 1, that increase your value. So that makes perfect sense.
It's funny that you guys are
Victory Lap. I was not one of those people.
It's funny that you guys are talking.
And DZ can attest to that. I was not a Kroll guy. He was not the dude. I wasn't like, oh my God. I was not him. I was not that guy. I refused to own it because it was not me. I was a Troutman guy. Like I was all over Troutman, saying that's the guy. I will own that, but I was not a Kroll dude.
you said something, Richie, about, tight ends playing fullback. That's like a thing that we're seeing league wide now. And it's, it's the Chargers have one, Tucker Fisk. He's a tight end / fullback guy. And then last year, they also, one of their D tackles, Scott Matlock, they converted him to fullback. And he played close to 400 snaps on offense and only 200 snaps on defense as a D tackle. And there's something they talked about this season where he says he wants to focus more on being a D tackle, which good luck because of the competition they brought in. That's, I think what he said to the team is like, look, man, I'm over this fullback stuff. And, he's following the money, rightfully so, right? You were drafted as a D tackle, and because, we all know fullbacks, they don't make anything, right? Unless you're
and you're lucky to even make the team.
Yeah, a guy I've been trying to get on the show, can't even get back in the league and was elite fullback for the time when he was at the Chargers. I mean, I don't want to say elite, but he just had all the characteristics. And so it's versatility is key, Rich. Like I think, that's huge. But there's a guy that the Chargers, a UDFA. I know, Richie, you love talking about UDFAs. This Stephen Kroll guy that they got out of Iowa, blue collar, hard nose kind of area. And if this guy doesn't want to play fullback and wants to stick to D tackle, and there's a guy that, this dude, when the pads come on, this is a guy I'm excited to watch. And I bet you are as well, where they're like, let's see what these guys can do with pads come on. But, we'll see. That's why I'm excited. Like, I don't really miss preseason games. I really like to watch them, and sometimes I'll rewatch and stuff. And, towards the end of the games, they kind of get a little like, all right, I'm done. But, there's really some of these guys that you're just like, all right, let's see what they can do. And there was a comment earlier in the show. I think his name is, I don't have control of the comments. He's a Raiders fan, Dr. something or other. A prospect I'm excited to see out of our whole division is the Samoan guy on the Raiders, Laki Tasi, 6'6", 350-pound D lineman. I think I'm going to tune into some Raider games just to see what this guy looks like. I don't know.
Yeah, what's interesting with Laki Tasi, I mean, he's a mammoth. I mean, he's probably the biggest guy on the entire Raider team. What I thought was really interesting when they brought him in, they were looking at him as nose tackle, and they moved him over to the offensive line, which I don't know how much I like that. I kind of like him more on the defense. You don't have to learn as much like as you do on the offensive line. So I thought as a nose tackle, that guy is that big. You get him on the goal line, oh my God. But he is a very intriguing player, and Richie will love this because he's a rugby guy. And, when he was playing rugby, he weighed 100 pounds more. He was in the 450 range.
Oh, my God.
He lost 100 pounds.
Jack, just to give you an idea of how rare that is.
Dude.
Okay, like I don't know how to say this, but like in football, there's a lot of start and stop, right?
Yeah.
You stop the play, you line up, you do the thing, the whole thing. That's not the way rugby works.
No.
Okay, rugby is constant movement.
It's like soccer.
So it's like soccer, exactly. Except I actually think rugby has even a little bit more movement than soccer in some regards. Or sorry, more physical than soccer in most regards.
Obviously, yes.
Because not only are you running around like you do in soccer, but you also have the physical contact element that soccer just doesn't have, despite what the Italian professional team will tell you, based on their fake dives and theatrics. But aside from all of that, like at 450 pounds, for you to be able to move up and down the field at any kind of pace whatsoever is rare air of rare air. Like there's just no other way of putting it. And then the other benefit, Jack, as well, what that also shows you is he has control over his weight and body. It's not just like he overeats and then just like, oh, well, I guess I'm this fat now kind of thing. It's basically I controlled where I was with my weight because it benefited me. Now I'm playing a different sport. I want to be more nimble and be slightly more versatile. I'm going to drop X amount of pounds or whatever. And that shows a tremendous amount of self-control, which I think is,
I mean,
I'm not a fan.
Everyone should go look that kid up. Look him up. When I was expecting, man, when I heard that, 458 pounds, and he comes over at 358, I was expecting an overweight looking guy. No, his body is not that at all. It looks, cut for with the t-shirt on. You've seen these offensive linemen with the big bellies and everything else, but he doesn't look like that at all.
Something about Jack. Something about I don't understand it, and that does not make any effing sense to me. Is how these humans come out of these tiny islands way out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean that are just massive human beings. It makes zero sense to me. I don't understand it because if you pay attention to anything about history, it's not like food resources were just abundant everywhere. Yes, there's food, but they're massive humans, man. Going from the Maori in New Zealand, you go across the Tongan, Fijians, Samoans. I think Samoans would probably be the biggest in my opinion. But how you were saying how he carries his weight, they're the only people I see that carry that weight like that for some reason. In football, it's a lot of African Americans, a lot of white, but you could tell when they get overweight because it shows. But for some reason, the Pacific Islanders, they carry that large weight. Who I'm talking about football player athletes. I'm not talking about normal people. They carry that weight in a way different way, in my opinion. And it just boggles my mind. Just as a human, just being, intrigued about the human the human physique. It's wild. It's wild to watch. I'm really excited to see him. And I know that, people are excited about a lot of prospects, but you kind of root for the guy.
Absolutely, just because he's got zero experience. But when you just see a person of that stature and that size, and it's just like what you just said, DZ, how in the hell did you grow to be that big?
It's amazing.
Height and thickness, and like I said, he doesn't look fat. I mean, that's the part that really blew me away when I first saw his pictures. I'm like, I was expecting a really overweight looking guy, and he's not that at all. It is mind boggling.
They're trying to make this rugby thing work, and I hope it does because there's already proof. There's already proof with the guy on the Eagles.
Eagles, I think he's probably the most successful out of any of them that come over.
Right.
I think he is. Agreed.
Yeah, he is an interesting mix and blend because he is massive, just massive, but he showed that he can transition and become that nimble blocker right on the offensive line.
Yeah. If you can honey dip in the rugby, scene, right? Like whatever country or team, because let's be honest, there's way more money in the NFL. So if some of these teams, if this international player program, if they can honey dip some of these guys and they can transition to the NFL, watch out because you're getting these elite athletes who, in my opinion, are ready for this type of contact and have that lower body built already. It's just them it's the language that they need to learn. So if they can learn the language and the technique, because in my opinion, I think NFL or football in general has way more technique than rugby does, but not saying that's bad. There's way more technique, footwork into it. So if they can get that, because I don't know. I love a rugby guy, so I root for them when they get in the league.
Well, I respect it, man. When you got no pads, no nothing on there. So, Richie, I have a question for you since you did rugby. So, when you're in a rugby game, how many players are on the field at one time?
Depends, but go ahead.
It depends. There's rugby sevens. It depends on which.
I think what is it full? It's 11-11.
11 is so if you go, it's called the rugby sevens, and then the English league is 11-on-11 basically, which is what you kind of have is, let's put it this way. I played 11-on-11. I played the British style rugby, and then I was recruited into the Aussie rules side, which is
even crazier.
Is even crazier. it's a really unique game where the offense, you're also offense and defense. So you have this like super weird hybrid depending on which position you play.
And then 7-on-7s is like it's like our flag. I don't even want to say that because it's even still physical.
Yes.
But it's like our flag style. It's faster, it's higher scoring, and that's what you primarily would see on like ESPN. Especially they have like the big sevens tournament in Vegas. But anytime on TV they got 11s on, I'm like, boop. I'm like on the remote. I'm like, nope, I'm watching this. I don't care what team it is. I'm watching it. If it's at like 2 in-the-morning, I don't really care. Because some of these like countries that you don't even expect have amazing rugby teams. Like France's team, Scotland, but even some of these obscure countries have like. And I'm trying to think of one. I can't off the top of my head. They've got great rugby teams, just incredible athletes. And you got to think real quick. I know we're getting off, going on a tangent, but these guys are like they're countrymen, right? So like. Japanese, right? Like, sure, there's some, immigrants on their team, but for the most part, they still will have to play like the British team or the Canadian team. And, sometimes lopsided score, but they're out there still banging heads, dude. Like, these guys, they are not weak men. They are still out there banging on each other. It doesn't matter. It's really cool to watch. And I like that. I think it's neat.
What's going to be fascinating at some point in time, again, because you have to use your hands, right? When is like a sumo wrestler going to come in on your offensive line? At some point in time, like all these different athletes from all these different countries, we see it more and more every year, especially with the NFL program coming in. I can see like a huge man.
There's too much money in sumo, though, Jack.
Oh, is it?
So they get paid. They're like rock stars in Japan still. So it wouldn't make sense to them. It'd be like a step down coming to the NFL for them. But I believe in the 90s, early 2000s, some teams for the international program brought in some Japanese guys. And if somebody would look this up, I could look it up myself. But I think I remember something along those lines.
You're talking too big of a stretch, in my opinion, to try to. That's a big hurdle. Like rugby. For example, for the dude that's playing right now for the Eagles, he played in the rugby scrums. So one thing that is analogous from rugby to the NFL game for a guy like the guy at the Eagles right now is
Jordan Mailata.
Yeah, Mailata. Hand placement is a thing when you're in the rugby scrum. You have to know where to place your hands to gain leverage. You have to know how to angle your body in order to gain leverage. Yeah. There is a tremendous amount of transferable skills from that group into the NFL at the offensive lineman. Now, I played the second row, which is the lock. So you have the props, which are the left and right guys, which are typically the biggest dudes on your team. Yeah. And then you have the hooker, who's in the middle of the two props, and then you have the two locks, or the second row. I played the second row, and those guys there in my position, I was the guy that was getting hoisted up to do the lineouts and catches from the sideline. I was also the guy that would circle back from the scrum because I was athletic enough to do it. And I was running with the wingman who was from the scrum as well. And we would catch passes from the backers to run up and score the tries, which is, you don't see it as much in the pros, but you do see it in like high school and stuff like that, because you get some of the high school guys that are 6'2", 240 and can run a 5-minute mile. Those are a little bit more rare at the pros because they like you to bulk up a little bit more when you play at the professional level. So you're typically a little too heavy to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, nice.
But it's a super interesting transitional sport into the pros. I do think that your Pacific Islanders are going to be the best suited to kind of transition to the NFL side because they grew up with football and rugby. So they have an appreciation for both games and assimilation to both games. The challenge that you have here in Canada in particular is our population is less than that of the US. And our professional athletes here that are hockey players, which is obviously a tremendously popular sport here in Canada, Once you get to being any kind of upper echelon level in the hockey world, it is written into a contract that you are banned from playing rugby.
Oh, wow.
Interesting. Did not know that.
Wow.
And it was actually one of the things that intentionally kept me away from hockey. One, I just never played because I was always skiing rather than playing hockey. But a bunch of my buddies' coaches, would see me walking with my buddies and be like, "Why is that guy not on our team? Like I don't understand." And the guy's like, "Oh, he plays rugby." So the coach would obviously come over and be like, "So, are you really interested in wanting to play hockey?" Blah blah blah. I was like, "Great, I'm a rugby player. Does that work for you?" I'm like, "Well, no." And I said, "Bye." and because I knew that you could not do both. Like the two sports in Canada are kind of juxtaposed.
So Richie, were you a good skater then? Because I've never gone ice skating once. So
me neither.
I cannot stop.
Man, I wish hockey.
I can turn. I can do crossovers. I can shoot a puck. I can take a puck if it hits me. Like I think that's kind of fun. Call me twisted, whatever. That's fine. I can take a stick swung at me without pads on. I thought that was also kind of fun. But the thing is that I just could never stop. I could never. No one could ever teach me the right technique in order to stop on ice. Like I couldn't figure out how to do it. No one was able to teach me.
Slippery concrete on razor blades.
So,
hey, Gord, how about you, brother? How are you at skating?
Well, clearly he said we lost an O lineman in high school due to hockey, and so it's
could you imagine taking one of these things to the face, man? I don't know if you guys
That's why they're missing teeth.
Exactly. This is a dangerous sport tool. This freaking thing, and they freeze them, and then they some of these guys are shooting them 80, 90 miles an hour, man. I'm like, no freaking way. I will gladly spectate. I love hockey to death, and I'm really kind of ticked off that the state of Florida has taken over. I think the last. How many championships are all in Florida now?
Two. They're back to back, right? They're back to back.
It's more than two because Tampa Bay Lightning, and now the Florida Panthers.
Yeah.
Let's not pretend that those are all Americans. They're mostly made up of Canadians, but
all across the world, actually. A lot of countries play hockey, which is cool. And all I know is for me as a San Jose Sharks fan, Nisa. Number 2 pick.
You have to be realistic here. The upper echelon of the NHL is still made up of 70% Canadians. It's still still is
there's a lot of Americans that's coming up, but it's not as much as Canadians. Eventually something will happen, especially with rinks.
Disproportionate. It's disproportionate, right? But yes,
a lot of Swedes and Norwegians and Finnish. Russians as well. It's a really cool sport.
But the issue you kind of get it, and this is the same thing with football and other sports. So for example, football is the reign supreme in the U.S. That's kind of what the national sport is, if you will, and all that. It's
weird too, right? It's the only sport that we're play here. It's our favorite.
Yeah. But the thing is, it also breeds a certain mental mindset when you play the sport. So in Canada, obviously that game is hockey. And so in Canada, we have this grit that is kind of baked into the culture as a result of hockey and lacrosse being our two big time sports that are really unique to Canada.
Lacrosse is cool.
Lacrosse is cool. It's also wicked violent as well. But again, the point being is that when you have these violent sports, truly violent sports, like lacrosse and hockey baked into your culture, you breed a certain amount of grit. The thing is, in the European style hockey, what they play over in Europe, it's almost like a watered down version of the North American gritty style of hockey that's played.
It's a finesse league. It's more speed, more scoring, less fight.
Isn't the rinks bigger though too?
Yes.
No, but yes, they are. But you lose the physicality of the game. You lose what you get from the NHL, and it's like the equivalent of here, I'll give you an example that I think the Americans will truly appreciate. It's like the difference between the CFL and the NFL. The
Yep.
CFL is a
Bingo.
bigger
Great
field,
analogy.
more finesse,
Mhm.
more, wham bam, quick paced, all that kind of stuff. And there's a reason why only a handful of those CFL players can ever then appropriately transition to the NFL. Similarly speaking, the European guys don't transition particularly well to the NHL, at least not to the extent that you would think they should, right? And that's simply because they don't play with the same grit. They don't have that same physicality. And so when they come to the NHL, they get their clocks clean. Like they literally just get hammered. So,
Damn, Nav. Go ahead and read it, Richie. Look at that. Nav, you the man.
Keep that bad boy. What? Oh, is this the guy channel you were telling me about the aircraft carrier?
Yeah, this is him. So,
he's a gunny sergeant. This is the one I said, you need to watch this intro.
Raider Shield family, Adon and I used to be co-hosts on Broncos Talk, where we believed we claimed the title of the tallest Broncos podcast on the internet. Adon is 6'10", and I'm 6'2", so we believe, from what we could tell, that we were the tallest combined hosts on the internet in Broncos country. And he is quite a large guy as well, and I'm certainly not small. And so it was really interesting to kind of see us together on screen. And he and I worked together for about a year together on Broncos Talk. It was a great show. Now I'm doing the Wild Wild West thing. But anyways, guys, we are getting up to the end of our show. I think we covered a lot of ground and spoke about a lot of folks and a lot of things and all that kind of stuff. We're going to be in a bit of a lull where we're going to have some interesting topics that we're going to try to bring to you, including our opponents and other things like that that are going to be throughout the league and throughout our division. We are currently working on getting someone to replace Alex as a Chiefs guy to get the other perspective in the show. And Raider Shield family, I'd like to thank you for that super chat. I read the whole thing.
Hey, Richie, I only bring quality to this show, bro. Like I said, if I'm not here, we call him 93 Nav is what we call him. So it's like he's the one I sent you the phone number to. It's like he's the one. If I'm not here, give him a call.
Yeah, he and I are going to be chatting soon. So we'll just read this in full. So we have your guys' show is great. Keep that bad boy going. You all invited my channel as a collab. You can reach out to me directly on X, and I will be texting you. I do have your number. So, and I think, Jack, please make sure you pass my number over to Raider Nav there as well. That's great that you super Adon and Bronco Libre for their first super chat. I think that's amazing.
Nice, man.
I think it's great. And happy to come on as a collab if you are looking for a Broncos guy to kind of give you the feedback on the upcoming games. Or if you're simply looking at a preseason versus preseason comparison or something like that, always love jumping on other shows. Captain Jack's audience is obviously quite familiar with me. Yep. I am one of the rare Broncos guys that is on there regularly, and I'm happy to, jump into enemy territory and have a respectful dialogue back and forth. I always see the importance of having respectful dialogue with your opponent, because you always are going to end up getting more information from your opponent when you're actually respectful in dialogue and conversation. And we can be mortal enemies, if you will, on Sundays when we play each other. But at the end of the day, it's a game of football, and ultimately we are likely all football fans, and we obviously do have our fandom as well of our teams. But football is what's great. So touch base with me. We'll go from there. And like I said, I've been on a bunch of Chargers podcasts. I've been on the Warpath. I've been on Jet Central. I'm on a bunch of different segments representing my Denver Broncos. A lot of those guys like me because I'm not going to come on and simply say the Broncos are going to win everything 50-0. I am pretty harsh when it comes to my team. which, to be quite honest, has actually made me one of the more accurate predictors when it comes to my team, as opposed to a dude that's wearing orange and blue glasses all the time.
Yeah, I'm kind of this last week after last show, I'm starting to, looking into this season. I wouldn't say I was like optimistic, just because I looked at our schedule. I'm flirting with cautiously optimistic, and just kind of also going, man, this schedule blows. Like, this is going to be a gauntlet. Not just with our division, I think we're playing 8 playoff teams or something like that, or something crazy along those lines. Like, it's nuts, dude. Like,
yeah, that is nuts. Well, I hope you guys drop down so we can pass you up. I am like, again, I'm not saying we're going to make the playoffs or anything like that, but compared when you only get 4 wins in the season, there's nowhere else but up, right? And, seeing what the Raiders did in this offseason, everyone's excited. Again, we could still be number 4 easily in the AFC West, but I guarantee you we're going to win a lot more games than 4 games. So the whole nation is definitely excited to see things that are turning around. You see it. You see it with the upper management, the coaches, the players' attitude, the vibe. You guys all get a vibe from your own rosters and your own fans of when people are talking, like how excited they are. And that's what I see for our, my Raiders this year, is that it's excitement. To see like grown men in the room versus like little boys, running the show that think they know something, but they don't really know something.
I agree.
And
well, guys,
I'll check my messages after the show, bro. I saw that earlier. I'll check it and give you a shout.
Like I said, that's going to do it for the show today. We had a lengthy one. We went into a lot of detail there. We're really going to start getting into the other nitty-gritty once that training camp starts, once that actual pads and all that sort of stuff really starts to kick in. I think it's going to be really interesting. It'll be the true litmus test for all of our teams to kind of gauge where things truly are at and get some good reads on D linemen, O linemen, linebackers, right? That's another position group we spoke about before, and all of the above. So, ladies and gentlemen, until next week, where the West Side is the best side, and we'll have more AFC West for you. Peace!
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle. Wait a minute, work